Hello and welcome to the weekly MG EVs podcast, streaming live on Monday, the 19th of April, 2021. We're here to talk to you about the MG ZS EV and the MG5 electric cars, hoping to inform and entertain you for about an hour or so. I'm Stuart Whitman, username Stuart46 on the forum, and joining me in this episode are Dave Stewart from Inverness in Scotland.
Hello all, Dave S on the forum.
And then we've got Mark Calvert from Suffolk.
Hello everyone, Mr. C on the forum.
And then we've got Mike Fisher from South Wales.
Hello, my username is Fish19 on forums.
And we've got Richard Edwards from Auckland, New Zealand.
Good morning everyone, I'm EVs and Beyond on the forums.
And then we've got from North Yorkshire, Innovations Development Manager at Chorley Group, Miles Roberts.
Good evening, everybody. Miles per kilowatt hour on the forum.
If you're watching live, thank you for joining us, and please click the like button and say hello in the chat window. If you're watching later, thank you for choosing to watch the video, and please subscribe to get a notification when we go live next time. Tonight, we're talking about home chargers and electricity tariffs. What home chargers and tariffs we recommend. Firstly then, let's welcome to Richard in New Zealand, where it's 6:30 in the morning. Perhaps just if you can give us a description of about your EV ownership, your experiences, and how things are with the EVs in New Zealand.
Yeah, no problem. So I've been tied into EVs for quite a while now. I'm actually a motoring journalist by trade, president of the Motoring Writers Guild in New Zealand, and run a magazine here called EVs and Beyond, alongside about a couple of other trade titles we do. I first drove an electric car in about 2003 and have been pretty interested in them for quite some time since. We have had a Leaf on our fleet now for about 6 years, and then I've run various EVs a longer periods of time. Late last year, we bought off MG here one of their test cars when they launched the MG in New Zealand. So I've actually got a United Kingdom spec EV down here, MG ZS EV down here in New Zealand. I kind of say we've got it. I took it home and the wife took the keys and I can't get it back off her. I think an experience a few of you are potentially used to. EVs are really rapidly growing here in New Zealand. It's such a great environment for them because we've got a relatively limited highway network, so quite easy to roll out rapid charging. We've got rapid charging on most of the highways no further than 50 kilometres apart, and we get cheap electric vehicles used out of the UK and Japan. Our market is open to those, and then we have 90% renewable electricity. So if there's a place in the world where it's clean to drive an electric car, it's down here in New Zealand.
Excellent. And it's becoming more and more popular, I guess, as it is in the UK.
Yeah, and that's despite the fact we have no real government incentives on the cars. We have a small advantage in that you don't pay road user charges, which are the equivalent, I guess, fuel taxes, which are worth about $70 per 1,000 kilometres or $70 per 60 miles. Sorry, if I keep talking about New Zealand dollars, I guess just split them in half and you're vaguely matching the pound. Yeah, it's growing. I think last month one in 18 new cars that was sold was a plug-in model. It's still very slow, but we're getting there. It's really positive signs.
Excellent. Okay. On another note, can you please look at our merchandise? There's a link in to the shop on the forum menu. A note about the March efficiency competition. Congratulations to A6 Taxi PL, who won with 4.9 kilowatts miles per kilowatt hour. Sorry. So very well done to you for the 4.9. I know on the forum recently we've been seeing some quite high fours, and I guess as the weather warms up, I'm quite excited about getting above 3.5, to be perfectly honest. But I still drive mine like I did my ICE car. So, and I'm not relenting. I'd sooner sit at a charger than get a tow from an articulated lorry with the risk of slamming into the back of it because I haven't got my pilot like you ZS owners have. So yeah, so we're looking forward to getting higher numbers. as far as the car shade star prize goes, our winner has actually had his windows tinted, so he doesn't need the shades anymore. So I believe he's going to be donating to a new competition, which will be coming up soon once we've got our thinking caps on there. We're nearly at 1,000 subscribers. It's 990 something. So subscribing costs you nothing, but it really does help this channel. So if you can, like and subscribe, we'd be really, really grateful if you could. Okay, so let's start the discussion. We've got the questions like, when do people use their electricity? Is it all day? Are you working from home? Do you maybe charge at work? Is it peak hours? Also, when do people want and need to charge the car, during the day or at night? So we'll start the ball rolling, I think, by just going around the people that we've got on board. So can I start with you, Mark? Is that okay?
Yeah, I don't mind starting. So for the previous discussions, I explained that I'm a new EV owner this year, and one of the things that I wanted to do was to get rid of my two ICE vehicles, and basically the electric car for me would have to take over doing the job of those two cars, which is my daily commute to work. So I would need to do 120 miles a day to get to work and back. But my works don't have any car charging facilities that we're allowed access to. So I needed a vehicle that could get me there and get me back. So I don't do any other journeys other than I go to work, I go home, and then the car sits outside the front of the house. So I knew that I needed a charging setup that would mean that when I go back to the car in the morning, that it's going to be fully charged, ready for me to go and do that commute again.
So what made you choose? What charger have you got?
So I decided to go with the Omi charger. And the reason why I went for that was because I was new to the electricity type of thinking. So I haven't got solar panels or anything like that, so I don't need a fancy charger where I can have it connected to my house and it take energy from the sun and then use that to go into the car. I didn't need that. I just needed a charger that had smart charging capability that meant that I could take advantage of when the electricity is cheaper at night. But this was sort of happening at the same time as well when my utility provider, this is before the car, my utility provider was changing to another company. It was becoming part of another electricity company, and my power, my kilowatt hour price was going up. So it was like a perfect time for me. I was getting the electric car, but I needed an electric supplier that is good for supplying electric to EV owners, which for me was Octopus. And the Omi charger for me, that I had no way of earthing the charger as well. So that's another reason why I went for Omi, because Omi have got a separate piece of equipment, which is, and I'm not an electrician, I don't understand it, but it's got pen fault detection, which means that you don't have to have it an earth spike in the ground, and that connects to your power supply. It's all very complicated, but identifying the energy provider for me, which was Octopus, which gave me a low rate tariff during the night, so I could charge the car really cheaply at 5p a kilowatt hour.
Is it working for you currently?
Fingers crossed, touch wood. Everything's working perfectly fine. I've put the car on charge for this evening. It knows that I want to put 30% energy back into the car. I'm paying 5p a kilowatt hour, and I think it's quoted me 86 pence for my charge tonight. So I've got the app on my phone. I can control the app. So if for whatever reason I want to, if there's an emergency or something, I need to charge the car straight away, I can intervene that charging schedule. I can get it to charge straight away to give me a fully charged car as soon as it can. So yeah, I've got lots of things going on. I can exploit the app. I'm getting a cheap tariff and I've got a good charger.
Okay. Right, complete opposite to what I've got. I need to have a chat with you, I think, because mine is completely the opposite. Miles, maybe if I can come to you as a dealer selling the car, do you recommend anybody at all with regards to the charger?
So with regards to chargers, previously it's changed over years because we used to originally have PodPoint and ChargeMaster, which were both approved by MG and by Nissan and so on. But we found that sometimes, particularly when there was promotions on where you got a free home charger, things like that when you bought the car, often there was issues with the speed of turnaround for getting the chargers installed. So, we'd sell a car, we'd tell PodPoint that the customer wants a charger fitting, and sometimes it'd be sort of 3 to 6 months before they actually got it one installed because of the not enough, basically so many people wanting the chargers and not enough installers and engineers, particularly with lockdown and so on as well.
Yeah.
And the problem of recommending one firm, like for example PodPoint, is it's good because for us in that you've got one point of contact. So if you know that all of your installs have gone through one thing, and the customer calls up and says, "I've got a problem with my charger," we can refer them back to PodPoint and so on and so on. But I haven't got a PodPoint charger myself, and I don't think the ChargeMaster unit looks particularly good on the side of your house. So when I was looking for a charge point, I went for an Anderson A2, which is a sort of more design-led charger, if you will. It's quite pretty. It's got a sort of like acacia wood front, and the cable's hidden inside it. So you'll be able to see that on the YouTube link now. So it's got like the cable stows inside it, so you can't see the cable. So when it's on the wall, it just looks like, I don't know, like a wooden box basically. But it's got an app to control it, so you can set your own charging times, and you can set when scheduling for when you want it to charge or not charge. It is only a simple on-off charger rather than the OMI, which Mark has, which can be used to fluctuate the charge rate depending on how cheap or expensive the electricity is. Mine's just, I set a period of 9:30 p.m. for example for it to start, and it'll start charging at 9:30 and it'll finish whenever it wants to finish. So the good thing for me about it is it's fairly straightforward to use on the app. I wanted a charger which blended in with the wall of the house because as you can see on the photos, that's my wife's car, we've got quite a it's Yorkshire stone house, and so it didn't want anything big white and plastic stuck on the outside of it aesthetically. So went for this Anderson charger, and so yes, it was more expensive. I think it cost me just over £1,000 to get installed. But I figured the house cost quite a bit as well, and we just moved house at the time, and I thought, well, we'll just effectively stick it on the mortgage in a way, and we'll get it done at the same time as the house. But I'm happy with it. It seems very robust. It's got a little light inside, so you can see where you're tucking your cable away at night. I say it seems to work very well. I've had Anderson out to it a couple of times. One because we had a fault with the charging lead. It was incompatible with the Mercedes that my wife had for a bit. Apart from that, it's been fine.
So
in terms of tariff, I'm on the Octopus Agile tariff, although it's been a bit expensive of late. So Octopus Agile is where the tariff changes every half hour, and it's basically the idea is that when the grid's got an overproduction of electricity, as it often does overnight, the rate drops down, and when it's peak rate, so typically between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m., you pay a more advanced rate. Now, I work from home most of the time. I've got 2 kids who don't know how to use light switches and leave the computers on constantly, and TVs and all the rest of it. And it's a fairly decent size, but it's modern. It's only 5 years old as our house, so it's all LED lights everywhere and things. But it's for us, it's our electricity usage. Even though I'm using electricity through the day, the car is massively the biggest consumer we have in the house. So on a day when I don't charge my car, my electric usage throughout the entire 24-hour period is probably averaging about 12, 13 kilowatt hours a day max. So, we're using sort of 500 watts an hour on average. And that's including, the fan oven and all that sort of stuff. But then overnight, potentially I might be putting, 28, 30 kilowatt hours of electricity into my car. So for me, it's important we have a cheap overnight tariff. And so that's why I went with that Agile. Now, Agile's been expensive of late. I have been considering changing to Octopus Go, which I think Michael Fisher is on. Is that right? Or Go Faster?
I'm on Go Faster. So
Right. I'll hand over to you to speak about that then.
Yeah, so the tariff I'm on is the Go Faster tariff from Octopus. So the Go tariff is starts at midnight and finishes at 4:30, and it's 5 pence. Whilst the Go Faster, you can either have a 3 hour, 4 hour, or 5 hour slot, and it's 4.5 pence, 5 pence, or 5.5 pence if you're on the 5 hour window. And Octopus will, you email Octopus with the suggestion, and then they come back saying, yes, you can have that time window, or no, we want you on this time window because of the grids. And it can start from 8:30 at night, and the last one finishes at 6:30 in the morning. So it's a 3 or 4 or 5 hours in that window. And I'm lucky I'm on 8:30 at night to 1:30 in the morning, where I pay 5.5 pence. That also means I can shift a bit of my heavy loads like tumble dryers and dishwashers into that 5.5 pence zone as well, without leaving it unattended, which you shouldn't be like tumble drying overnight for fire risks. But also, I've got a Zappy charger. The main reason is I've got solar panels. So when I'm at home, which is 2 days out of the week often, I try and then plug in and try and get as much power out of the solar panels without drawing power from the grid. And during the summer months, I'm looking like 15 pence for typically 15 to 20 kilowatts into the car.
Right.
Yeah, that's a bit like me, Mike. I got solar panels, so rather than go to MG and ask which charger I should get, I went to Scottish Power, who I do my feed-in tariff through, and they recommended Wallbox. And I must admit, I'm quite happy with Wallbox. It doesn't do a hell of a lot. You can change the speed of charge, and you can schedule in charge times as well. But currently, I'm all over the place because, like you, Mike, I'm trying to charge up during the day normally because it's almost free energy. But as some of the other viewers of the podcast and podcast colleagues will know, I'm recharging my battery on with the BMS upgrade, which is going very well, Miles. I'm up to 443 watts now. I am just about there. So my car is constantly on charge just now, it appears. I actually nip out and drive to 85% and then get back and feverishly go put my car back on charger. So I can't tell you how much it's costing me at this precise moment. I just want to get the car back up to full strength.
So if you, with yours then, Dave, are you, excuse my ignorance, with your solar panels, so does that not cost you anything because you're charging your car up with your solar panels?
Yeah, Mike's right. It'll cost you something, but not very much. What happens is the solar panels create energy, which gets fed back into the grid.
Yeah. We
develop what we want to use. There's some algorithm they use for working out what you do, but I think it's pretty much 50-50. I think they just look at it and go, you've had enough. So honestly, in a nice sunny Scottish summer's day, when it's sunny for 24 hours a day practically,
we're Wednesday, isn't it?
We're raking it in. Oh, we love when you English people come up and go, oh, isn't it still bright here for 11 o'clock at night?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's practically free energy. It is costing me a bit, but and that was one of the things I was interested in getting the EV for, just for tapping into that. But yeah, as I say, just now I haven't a clue. In fact, just now I couldn't have entered the miles per kilowatt hour competition because I'm just going through crazy mileage. And sorry, everybody, I was driving in sport mode the other day just to use up a bit of battery wantingly.
Okay, and all that time it feels like ages, and it's turned into daylight in New Zealand. It feels like we've been talking for ages already, doesn't it? So how does that compare to New Zealand then, Richard, with regards to, we've had 4 different opinions. Mine is a bit different as well, but I'll give you the details in a moment. What about yours then, Richard? How's that over there? Is there many different tariffs?
Yeah, I mean, look, going back to the charger side, I mean, at home where we are at this stage, we're still charging on the granny lead, and that's simply because we just don't seem to do the miles or kilometers, as the case may be here. I mean, where we live, it's a long way around, but we tend to only run around a little village, and then maybe once in a while we'll go into the city, and we find the car can do the 200 kilometer return trip absolutely perfectly. And then it doesn't do much for the next few days, so it charges up fine. We are considering a couple of options for a charger at the moment that's a little smarter. I'd like some with scheduling and so forth, particularly because my wife has embraced the EV amazingly, and just every time she gets into the garage, even if she's gone a kilometer, she'll go and plug in, and I'm not necessarily sure that's the best thing for the car in the long run. So trying to encourage her just not charge sometimes. So if I could do that with an app, that's great. So we're looking at a YHI Delta charger and also an ABB unit at the moment. There are a few interesting projects going around here in regards to charging. We work with a residential island in Auckland called Waiheke, and they've got a bit of a goal of being all EV, and they have one power cable in, one power cable out. So the local lines company has actually rolled out a couple of hundred chargers to users on the island for free, and they're actually assessing charging habits and how things work to see how they can best come up with things like tariffs here, and also manage the load on the system from that charging. For our tariff, our house particularly, we're currently on a promotion where we actually get free charging every weekend, so free power every weekend. So we are making use of that to charge where we can, and once we come off that, they're going to give us, depending on the time, some special rates for our EV, though I'm not expecting much because we're on one of the cheaper rates already. We are on a smart meter, so they can do a little bit of control there. If there's any other listeners here from New Zealand, in our magazine, and sorry for the plug, we do actually have a schedule of tariffs in New Zealand. They tend to be more around promotion rather than on long-term viability at this point. For example, one of the companies here will give you what they say is free charging for a year. Really, it's $300, which I don't think will get you anywhere near a year's charging. One of them gives you 20% off your overnight rates, no matter whether it's going into the EV or not. We've got ones which give you, again, certain hours of power rated at a certain number of kilowatts, a period of time. Ones that give you wholesale rates overnight, down as low as so I've got here 5.7 cents per kilowatt, so about 2.5 pence a kilowatt. Wow. Yeah, so they all vary, and I guess it just depends on what people's needs and usages are to what they're going to do. So I do recommend that checking that out if you are in New Zealand on the EVs and Beyond website.
Okay.
That was a plug for electric.
Oh yeah. I kind of didn't have a choice of charger because I just wanted my charger as soon as possible. So I ended up with an MG the MG dealer recommended Rolec. Which, are you familiar with that, Miles?
Yeah, so Rolec's one of the approved installs. The problem with Rolec is they don't use their own install network. They use third parties, which means that the quality can vary considerably. You get some really good installers out there, and they do a really good, neat job. And hopefully yours was one of those. and then you get some who seem to sort of nail it on the wall and be done in about half an hour. And the sort of thing where you post, I mean, no electrician ever looks at another electrician's work and says they've done well.
No.
But you know, you never get someone go open up a charger and go, I really like what they've done here. They've done a really good job. Invariably, whenever I've had any electrician to my property and he's changed the light switch or whatever, they've all looked at it and gone, why have they done that? What a cheapskate. What? So, but actually, the one time that happened, my Anderson charger was installed by the Phoenix Works at Leeds, who are a company which specializes in EV charging and solar and things like that. And they installed a charger at my last property as well. And at the time when I wanted the Anderson charger, Anderson didn't have their own install network. So I approached the Phoenix Works and asked them to install the Anderson for me. And they did a really good job, to the point where after a year, when Anderson came out to do a warranty repair on it, they looked at it and said, God, they've really done this very nicely. They had like when they're putting the cables on the walls, they're using spirit levels to make sure it's all level, you know, that sort of thing, you know, really attention to detail. Took them best part of a day to install it, you know, whereas opposed to some of them which are, you know, 2 hours and they're gone. Nowadays, we've got actually a new, we've got a local electrical contractor in the Northwest they do all of our on-site works at the dealership, and going forward, we're going to be recommending them for charger installs, because they've started a new team of installation. They can offer the Zappi and the Anderson and, well, any charger pretty much, you know, but they seem to be coming out quite a lot cheaper than some of the. I've heard some scare stories of people who've like had quotes for chargers in, you know, and they've seen the price quoted as being like $495, and then they've had a bill of materials, you know, quote come through, and it's like, you know, £1,100, which, I mean, unless they're, you know, building you an extension at the same time, it shouldn't be an issue. It shouldn't cost that much, you know. So I think that so one of the things that these guys are doing for us is that they're going to basically keep costs low, give a typical install cost, which, you know, unless the guy needs a whole rewire in his house, you know, when they're getting the charger installed, and even so, you know, if they're changing consumer units, it'll be like an extra £100. It won't, you know, which is the cost of the consumer unit. It's not going to be, you know, running into hundreds of, you know, pounds.
Yeah.
Yes.
I heard one dealer, I think it might have been a Rolex. Somebody was said that they were quoted so much. They only allocated 3 meters of cabling as part of a standard install, and if you want, and this guy needed like 10 meters of cabling, and they were going to charge him X per meter extra, which I think, you know, when they're getting £300 off the government from a grant, and they do it, you know, on top of their install cost, and it's really taking them 2 hours, I think that they're probably doing. I think some of the installers. I'm not saying it's the manufacturer. I'm not saying it's Rolex, but I think some of the installers perhaps taking liberties.
Yeah. So overall, is everybody happy with the chargers they use?
Mine's very simple, easy to use, and works away well. I think the point Miles made there is well made, that Scottish Power sub out the installation to another company, and that left me a wee bit uncomfortable. I got mine fitted just in the first weeks of lockdown, and the engineer just didn't want to be there, and my gas and electricity are in the same cupboard, meters are in the same cupboard. And as he left, he went, oh, by the way, there's a bit of a smell of gas in there, and I opened the cupboard. Oh my God. So I actually had to call out the emergency gas services to make it safe that night. So wasn't too chuffed with that. So I think the point Miles makes is true. You know, you could be subbed an installer that maybe doesn't do as good a job.
So I used the Phoenix Works as well for my Zappi install. They were pretty excellent. The only disadvantage with Zappi is the app. It goes through their servers rather than be locally based, where you send the request on the app and goes straight to the Zappi. It goes from the app up to My Energy servers and then back down, which sometimes if their servers go down, you can't use the app, which means you have to run out in the cold and quickly turn on the charger or set up the scheduling on the charger first, and just make sure it's on the unit rather than the app if the My Energy servers crash. But apart from that, I love my Zappy.
Yeah, I've had a really but because I was recommended the Rolex, I went with it. And then you're nodding, Mark. Did you get the Rolex as well?
Oh, I got the Omi charger,
Oh,
but
yeah. I was really disappointed when I found out recently that EV Energy, which I think is on the back of the Rolex charger, which I thought was all the same. I've got a problem that I've had is that I started off with a company called Simplicity Energy that was a really decent rate, about 12.5 pence flat rate. And then they went bust, probably because they were charging 12.5 pence the rate. So British Gas Evolve took over and whacked the flat rate up by about 5 pence per kilowatt hour. I was never able to smart charge because I put it on smart charge and EV Energy were telling me that the car falls asleep basically and it does part charge. And I found that where I do a regular, where I need all the battery and some, like a charge out journey once a week, I was having to kind of almost have a sleepless night to make sure the car was being charged when I put it on a boost, because you have this boost function on the app where you just boost it. And then one morning it came down, it was only 70% charged. So when I went back to EV Energy, they kind of just said that, you know, there's nothing they can do. They might be able to do a workaround. Since then, I've gone over to Octopus, but I want to get on to Mike's tariff, the one you're on, but I've got to have a smart meter and I haven't got a smart meter either. So now on their basic tariff, so it's a bit of a mess, isn't it? So,
yeah, unfortunately, with the Go and Go Faster, you do need a smart meter that Octopus can read. Otherwise, they don't get the data, so they don't know when you plugged your car into charge with a dumb charger, unfortunately. Yeah, but with dumb chargers, the one good thing is you can, if you're on a really good rate, they do work, dumb chargers.
Yeah, I've got a smart meter, but it doesn't read gas for some reason, and it reads the electricity on the display absolutely incorrectly. It's about 10, indicates about 10 times more usage than I'm actually using. So I've lost confidence in the smart meter, but I've actually listened to what everybody's saying, because I will start looking at what should I be getting as a tariff to augment my own photovoltaic cell input. So keen to hear what everybody's getting charged and how they're doing it.
Yeah, when was your solar panels installed, David?
About 8-9 years ago.
So you're on the older fit scheme, which I am as well. So you can still keep the payments for the fit with Scottish Energy. When it would be about 15 pence, I believe, for the generation. And then you can still go with Octopus for your regular energy as well.
All right. Okay, I did not know that. Great.
Yes. So if the solar panels are fitted before March 2019, then you would be on a scheme called feed-in tariff, or fit scheme. And basically you get paid X amount for generation, which for me, because it's 2013 panels, I get paid about 17 pence, I believe. And then a 50% of what I've generated for export at 5 pence. So it works out to about roughly 20 pence for each solar unit.
All right. Well, I always thought I was honor bound to stay with them. So, that's interesting.
And so no, your incoming tariff can be anywhere with anyone. Because originally I had my payments coming from Co-op, but they got taken, they got merged with Octopus. But because of the merger and Ofgem rules, I had to apply to Octopus to transfer the payments to Octopus, even though Co-op was part of Octopus. That's how crazy that scheme can get at times.
That's when Stuart and I just grab our heads. No,
Yeah.
this is too difficult.
Yeah.
I actually had to email Greg, the CEO at Octopus, because one of the fits wasn't going through correctly on Octopus's sides, and it's just like, come on, Greg, I want it transferred over. But is there any like government incentives in New Zealand over solar?
No, not at all. The only government incentives we have at the moment around the electric vehicle space is around, well, it covers a couple of areas. They've been incentivizing the installation of rapid charging hardware and things like rollouts of demonstration fleets, commercial fleets, that kind of thing. The government takes a couple of rounds of applications every year. And they then will pay basically half on invoice of the cost of the project. So it's more about, at this stage, developing infrastructure and setting the scene for electric vehicles, as opposed to actually funding the cars or the home charging at all. There's no grant for home installation for EVs, solar charging, anything. But conversely, it's meant that for a small country, we've got a fantastic electric vehicle DC charging network on a very, very quick rate, which has been quite handy.
Yeah, because the solar schemes all ended in March 2019, and now pretty much you've got what I think is now called a smart export guarantee, where if you get solar panels or a battery, they'll you get about 3.5 pence for export now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the export rates here are pretty low. I mean, one of the things to understand with the New Zealand market is that the way we generate our electricity means that there's actually not necessarily the environmental gain as a whole to the country in having home solar fitted. It is a great thing to have on a home basis if you want to save on your electricity bill, and I encourage people to do that. But there's been a couple of studies run both independently and government funded, which have shown that if you want to reduce your CO2 output, or your net CO2 output, you're far better off in New Zealand buying an electric car than you are putting solar on your house. As I said, we're 90% renewable, depending on which time of year it is, sometimes more, sometimes less. So all you're doing by putting solar on is replacing green energy that's already going into the grid, and potentially making it less cost effective for the rest of the grid by doing that.
Sorry, did you have more to say? Sorry.
It was saying it's arguably a good thing. I mean, in that you know, the whole discussion about, well, your car is taking on coal generated electricity, and look, that's a very complicated subject, and the cars are of course more efficient with that electricity than a petrol car. But here we don't necessarily have that. For our listeners or colleagues in Australia, it's a far different thing. You definitely would want solar if you were worried about your carbon footprint in Australia and you're running an electric vehicle. Sure, the car is still more efficient, but your grid isn't necessarily quite as green. I'm not sure what the percentage is on the UK grid these days. I'm not sure if anyone has any idea about your renewable percentage.
I believe it fluctuates a lot. I know it used to be about 15% coal, but I believe during 2020's lockdown, we ran no coal for 3 months virtually.
Great.
There's an app, isn't there, to show how it's the ESO app, the National Grid ESO app. Is anybody aware of that?
Oh, Grid Carbon is the one I use on my phone.
Yeah, the ESO one will tell you, like, it's the National Grid ESO, and currently it was saying here that the GB generation mix is 60% gas.
Yeah, it's not good at the moment. I've got 316 grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour, sorry, average, which is we're using 4.3% coal, 4.9% wind. Obviously, no solar at the moment. What with it being dark outside now.
Home charging in New Zealand is going to be really interesting in the future, because our issue with electricity production is not so much how and I'm sure the same in a lot of places, not so much how much we generate. We can generate plenty of electricity from our renewable sources. The problem is they're all at the other end of the country to where the population lives. And so our only coal-fired power station is just south of Auckland, and it's essentially used as a battery. They run it up when in the rare cases that the lakes get low, they run it up, and then also they run it up in the peak evening period because they simply can't shunt enough electricity up the country through the current infrastructure to feed the evening peak in Auckland. So things like that vector trial I was talking about earlier are, looking at opportunities where you can get the electric vehicles and other items away from those times, so that they don't necessarily have to run that. But also in the future, they're definitely looking at things like V2G or battery storage from expired electric vehicle batteries to have that use that storage method rather than having to just fire up that coal station just for the sake of easing that evening peak.
So I've lost my train of thread. Yeah, so yeah, that's fine. So with regards to when we're charging then, so who plugs straight in when they get home? Yeah, see, I do, because I want that confidence that it's charged by the time I'm going to bed.
I plug in, but it doesn't start charging till
Yeah.
midnight or whatever.
Right, okay.
My timer on my charge, so I plug in as soon as I get home, but it doesn't actually activate the charge until
Okay.
whatever.
Yeah, it's same. Unless it's especially sunny when I get home at 6 o'clock at night, and it kicks in the final trickle of power before the panels turn off.
Okay, of course, because so it just goes to show we've all got kind of different ways of managing, haven't we? Mine's called chaos, I think, where I just plug it in. But my concern is that I bought the car, yes, to save money, but also to be a bit more green, if you like. But yet I find myself coming home from work at about 6, 7 o'clock in the evening and just plugging straight in and boosting it, and therefore not getting very green energy through the app kind of not working. So hopefully I'll get my smart charger in due course once Octopus take over my electricity, which could be any time, I guess. But okay, so anything on the forum or anything on the chat then, Mike?
So on the chat, let me just scroll down. Jake went and got a Zappy charger for 688 installed, including the grant, which is good. A few other questions, I think. Does anyone have a battery with their solar panels? David, have you got a battery?
I'm toying with it. I've asked the company for a quote. They're still currently about £9,000-10,000, although I've heard one a good bit cheaper. So I'm looking at it at the moment. It would be great to have a battery backup. Yeah.
Do you have one, Mike?
No, I don't.
That's a lot of money, isn't it, to
Yeah.
splash out?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I don't think I'd. Is it a popular thing, getting batteries?
It depends on how many cells you've got, photovoltaic cells you've got, and if you're creating a lot of your own energy, why not store it and have it on tap for whenever you need it? You're right. I sort of did the sums. If it's around 8-9 grand, it's going to take me a long time, and I get a bit too late in life to recoup that. But if the prices do come down, and I was speaking to somebody, and they were saying, I think it was a Tesla actually, and it was coming in somewhere about 4.5. But I've still yet to find that.
It's still a lot of money, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that amount of money. So with regard, so just sort of like talking about the chargers, it's quite interesting. Everybody, we've all got different ones. I must admit, using mine on a day-to-day basis. Miles mentioned he's got his posh one with the housing, and I regret actually not getting one that covers up and, if you like, retracts. Mine rolls round the outside of the unit, and it's exposed to all the weather. And the other day when I had to plug it in, no, unplug it, that's right, unplugged it, put it on the wall, got in the car, hands filthy from the, the muck and pollen and everything else that ends up. So does anybody else have that problem? Or is it just me?
Yeah, the wall box is just a loose lying tether, which is a bit untidy. If I was a bit more driven, I would put up a wee holder for it, but it fits in nicely into the wall, which is all part of the charger. But the cable, as you say, does just lie on the ground in a coil.
Yeah, I just rather, if I could just, does yours just pull then and retract them, Miles?
Oh no, it's not that advanced. No, it's it winds around the unit, but part of the thing as well with the Anderson is they use a special type of cabling so that you don't necessarily need to unwind the entire thing.
Yeah.
So I've got an 8-meter cable on my charger because I've got a tandem drive, so one car in front of the other, so I can reach both bonnets, both charge sockets, and also with my work as well, I tend to change my car. Sometimes I'll be in a car which has a charger not on the front; it'll be on the rear quarter or something. So I went for an 8-meter charging cable built into the unit, and it works well. You can only, if you want, you can just unroll half of it, and the cable gets warm, but it doesn't overheat. It doesn't burn like some risk otherwise. But
is that a thing? Sorry to interrupt. Is that a thing?
Round. Sorry.
Is that a thing? Can it get hot?
Yes, if the cables are wound up, any coiled cable basically becomes
like your extension lead. Yeah.
It basically becomes like a heating element. So the tighter it's wound, the hotter it's likely to get as well. So that's why if you're using it, whilst talking about charging, probably worth saying, obviously the car comes with a 3-pin granny lead for slow charging. You can use those on extension leads, but just make sure the extension lead is fully unwound, because if you look at the rating on a typical extension lead, it might say 13 amps, but that's when fully unwound. When it's wound up, it might only be rated for 3 amps.
Yeah, good thinking. Yeah.
It's also checked the extension lead actually is rated for 13 amps, because I've got one that I use for gardening and it says 10 amps only. So if you plug a electric car into that, you will have a melted extension lead.
Potential fire.
Yeah.
Okay. And Mark, yours, is it a wound up one?
So one of the considerations for me when I was looking at getting the car charger was where I was going to put it. So like everybody else, probably I was watching lots of YouTube videos about installations and the types of chargers and all that kind of stuff. I didn't want to bolt something to the front of my house, so I wanted to be awkward, and I wanted to have mine out of sight, and only deploy the lead when I needed to charge. So my garage sits next to my house, and I wanted the charger to go just inside the garage door, low enough to allow the lead, because it was a fixed charger. It's not a plug-in, so the lead's physically attached to the charger. I wanted enough distance and reach with the lead to be able to plug it into the car. So all you see at the front of my house is the actual charging cable coming underneath the garage door and then straight into the car. So when we were talking about the granny charger as well, I didn't like the idea of running an extension lead out of my garage to do that. And so at the same time, when I had my charger installed, I had a designated 3-pin plug point on its own circuit breaker off the distribution board. So I've got a designated 3-pin socket next to my charger. So I've got a backup ready to go if the charger malfunctions for any reason. I can plug it in off the granny charger, and the distance with the cables, it's all the same.
Another thing as well, when I had mine fitted, the installer was really good, and I'd have recommended him. But he was saying that they got busy with new house builds and that they're having to install chargers to the new houses, but they're not very good. I don't know if anybody's heard. Anybody? They're not as good as the ones that we've got, which are
So a lot of home. So for new homes, they've got a thing that they've got to put. Often in the planning permission, they've got to put some sort of car charging method. A lot of what they're installing are basically 13 amp external sockets.
Yeah.
So it's a waterproof, fuse controlled external socket, often used in the Rolex wall box. So it's the same looking lozenge as yours. It's just it's only fed with a 13 amp supply.
Yeah.
And yeah, they did that on a local estate for us. Not on our housing estate actually, but on one they built recently in Skipton. They just put these 13 amp boxes. I suppose it's useful if you've got a plug-in hybrid. It's useful if you've got an EV, I guess. It's useful to have an external plug socket. You can always use it for your jet wash and things. But one of the questions we had early on in the podcast on the comments was somebody said, should I bother getting a home charger, or am I okay sticking with the slow one? Well, it kind of depends on what sort of mileage you're doing. If you're doing 20 miles a day,
yeah,
a 3-pin plug socket is going to add probably 6 to 8 miles of range in an hour. So, a couple of hours and you're done. If you're doing sort of, 80 to 100 miles in a day, it's going to take, potentially sort of 10, 12 hours on a 3-pin plug to add that much charge back in. So that's when, go looking for a 3-pin, for a 7 kilowatt charge, which can add more charge in a quicker period. And certainly when you look at these time of day tariffs, like we're talking, where you've got maybe a 4-hour or 5-hour window of cheaper rate electricity, if you can fully charge your car in that 4 to 5 hours, or near as damn it, charge it in that time, then that's obviously going to save you a lot of money versus having, a 2 kilowatt charge spread over 12 hours where you only hit.
That's a good point.
20, you only put 20% of the battery in the cheap rate, and the rest of it's going in at the full rate. So, yeah, I like having a 7 kilowatt charger in my house. I think it's really useful, and I think it also, now I've noticed on Rightmove quite a few people selling houses saying that they've got a car charger as part of the selling benefits of the, in the same way as you might, I don't know, previously have advertised the fact that you had, solar panels, for example, saying that you've got a home car charger, I think is going to be quite a selling point going forwards.
Yeah, for sure. Especially with the aggravation, like I say, I had to wait a little while. If I wanted one installed next week, kind of thing, after I got the car, it would have cost me over £1,000. But I waited about, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks. It was the lead time. Even some of the bigger brands, the more corporate ones that advertise, they're saying about quick lead times, and everybody's at it, aren't they? There's just not enough. The lead time, just such a long time if you want to buy a car and then get a charge in a quick amount of time.
I think for most people, they're gonna survive without one, but their overall user experience is going to be far better with one.
I definitely, for the journeys I do for my work, I definitely needed one, and I just went with that one. But I guess you can change it in the future, can't we? Anything else on the chat, or anybody want to add anything else?
So Red Road, the builder, wanted to charge £500 for Rolex 13 amp 3-pin socket.
Wow.
Yeah, that's just scandalous.
Wow.
Jeff has said, My Energy confirms that with the Zappi, the lead can be partially unwound. Jeff, is that the tethered unit or the untethered unit? Because I've got the untethered unit, and it was dependent on cable specs for me. But also Rob Wilson said, I have a Zappi, and he had a fault with the locking relay going out. They literally sent him out the parts, and it was a 15-minute job fix to get it, the Zappi working, and the customer support is brilliant. Stuart is playing how the Zappi video works on the chat video on the side right now.
Okay. Another thing about does anybody use EV Energy as the app provider on their charger?
Yeah, I think that's a Rolex thing.
Oh, okay, because I didn't realise, but I just thought that was part of the Rolex package. But amongst the emails that I got from them, it sounds as though I'm going to be having to pay a subscription after a couple of years with EV Energy. Has anybody heard of that at all? So yeah, it is a really weird one. It's, I forget what the email said exactly, but it was along the lines of, because I said, I'm not very happy with that situation that I had, and I'm not very happy with EV Energy and their lack of being able to work with the MG when they say they did. And they said, well, you can, it's a free service, but you can choose to go elsewhere. I don't know how I'd even look at going to another app for the charger. No one know anything about that?
No, I'm sorry, clueless.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So
the other thing that I remember listening to the EVA Scotland AGM, not this year, but last year, there was a guy on from University of Strathclyde who was saying that he had a 7-volt charger and somebody had jarred him about, was going, oh, but how long does it take to charge your car? And he says, so it takes 6 seconds. He says 3 seconds to connect, to go to bed for 8 hours, and it's 3 seconds to unconnect in the morning. Haven't had a chance to use that one yet, but
yeah, it's a question you often get asked, isn't it? When people are actually asking about the car, how long does it take, and also the common one is, so do you have a battery in the boot that you can plug it into if you are getting short, which is another one that I've been asked several times. I don't know if anybody's ever had that one either. Okay, has anybody got anything else to add about your boxes?
I definitely don't miss the queue for the pulling into the petrol station on the way home, because there's normally, for you to arrive there where there's an empty space on the way home when it's busy, to have to fuel up so you're ready to go the next day. I don't miss that. I do like driving home where I know that there's a socket ready to plug into. But I'm also mindful as well that we've got people that are listening that are maybe considering purchasing an electric vehicle for the first time, and they're listening about us talking about chargers and stuff like that. And obviously you've got to do your due diligence and look for something that's going to be really relevant to your own situation with the type of vehicle and the amount of charging. But one thing is, you'll decide that you may want a certain type of charger that may have some smart technology functionality. And if you do want a smart charger, it's going to become obvious to you when you go through the process of getting that car charger, somebody to come and install it, because they're going to send you a questionnaire, and you've got to answer certain questions about the infrastructure of your property. And one of the things, the first questions to me was that I wanted the Omi charger, and I wanted smart charging functionality. One of the questions was, have you got a smart charger? And I was like, I don't know. I go home and I plug things into the house and I get electric. How do I know what charger? What have you got a smart meter? So you go out to look at you meet the type of meter that you've got, and I realised that I didn't know anything about electricity or meters or anything like that. But if you want a smart charger, you have to have a smart meter. And a way to check to see if you have got a smart meter is to see whether you've got a SMET2 meter, and that tells you whether you've got smart charging. But that's when we get into the whole discussion about smart meters and the infrastructure in your property, because you need that there to be able to support the type of charging option that you want for your own car. So that's all.
Did you do research before you got your car?
Oh, I watched all the videos. I was there. I'd watched the videos. I was all educated. I knew exactly what I wanted. But it's only when you go through those processes of then realizing what charge you want, and then it's sort of, well, is my meter a smart meter? Does my consumer unit have enough capacity? Because if you want to install a designated charger in your property, you need to have enough capacity in your property, enough available electricity to be able to supply that 32 amp unit that you're going to put in your home. So most domestic properties are 60 amp rated power to the house, and that's when I realized that if I was going to add something that would use 32 amps, that is my wiring durable enough to be able to put that piece of equipment in. And it suddenly came to light that there was a lot of other things that you needed to do to improve the wiring and everything that you've got coming to your property. And it's not as simple as just calling an electrician saying, can you fix this? Because certain parts of the power to your property and the power from your smart meter to your consumer unit, that certain parts of it are owned by UK power networks. Some of it is owned by or is only allowed to be touched by your service provider, and it just takes you down a winding path of lots of decisions that you have to make.
That's all the drink behind your shoulder there. You've resorted to that.
Well, no, it's just one of those natural things that everybody has to go through. That, I mean, you need to understand that nobody's going to come and start installing all of this fancy equipment in your house if the infrastructure's not set up to accept it. So you have the power that comes to your house, and that's the UK power network, and they're the only ones that are allowed to change the supply fuse to your property, which is, for a domestic house, is 60 amps. So for me, I knew that I needed to upgrade that, so I had to schedule with the UK power network to come out to upgrade my fuse to a 100 amp fuse. And the knock-on effect from that is, if you're introducing more power into your property, your wiring needs to be durable enough. Mine was rated 60 amps, so I'm trying to put 100 amps of power through 60 amp wires. So my wires needed upgrading. So my service provider had to then come, once the fuse was changed, well, once the fuse, it didn't work that way, sorry. It was my utility provider, the people that provide my electricity, had to upgrade the wiring to make it more heavy duty from my smart meter to my consumer unit. And then once that wiring had been upgraded, I then had to go back to UK Power Network, who were responsible for upgrading the fuse to the house. They had to upgrade that to a 100 amp supply. And then once that was done, then I could have my car charger installed. So this is why it's not as simple as who supplies your electric and what's the best tariff to go on. There's lots of stuff to look at.
Do you know what?
It is a real problem.
If I'd listened to you before I put the deposit down on the car, I don't think I'd have bothered.
It's not a big drama. It really isn't.
No.
But that's the reason that we're here, is because we've got a trailer. Everybody else is just following a trail of breadcrumbs that everybody else has just laid, haven't they? So it's easy once somebody's done it once.
Yeah. I think
it is a real problem that here in New Zealand, if you go and I know other end of the market, but if you go buy a plug-in vehicle from Audi, they actually pay for a contractor to come out and do a home energy assessment on your house and decide whether you do have the capacity to charge the vehicle, or whether you will need upgrades, or what you're going to need, and whether maybe solar is advantageous for your house if you don't have enough power, or battery storage. It'd be interesting to see other distributors look at. I'm not sure if any of them do it there, offering that kind of service as part of that process. It all goes back to, particularly I think with new buyers coming into the electric vehicle space, if they go in and they do this and it doesn't go well, then that, I think could be a something to disincentivize them continuing. You're buying their second electric vehicle.
I think that's probably why the dealers, and maybe Miles can say, it's probably why you don't get involved in the installations, because if it does go a little bit wrong, then it reflects on the dealership, doesn't it?
Yeah, my installer. Sorry, Richard, when you go.
So I was going to say, we've got to be careful when we're selling the car that we say, if we say to the customer, oh yeah, we tell PodPoint that you're going to get a charger and they'll come out in 2 weeks and fit it. And then they take the car home with a 3-pin plug and, with the expectation of getting a charger installed in the next 2 weeks. And we've had a situation before where someone's been on a looped supply, and so they've had to dig up next door neighbours' granite driveway to put new cables in. It's all paid for by so there are a number of houses in the UK which are on a loop supply. Basically, when they were building semi-detached houses or terraced houses, they basically, to save cost, they'd run a cable into house A, and then they'd put a loop around the front of the property to house B, or through the party wall to house B, and it was called a looped supply. And so what you find is that you perhaps got 100 amps going to property A, but really they're sharing 50 amps each. Which
Yeah.
obviously, if you want to then use 32 amps for your car charger, isn't going to be ideal. So the power companies will come and they will, if you put in a request, well, if your installer puts in a request for you, then you can get an upgraded supply. But it does mean often whoever's the parasitic sucking your electricity is going to have a new cable put in. And in one case, yeah, it was involved in new. And I've known somebody that what is it? Some sort of high end. I think it was like a granite or something. They'd had granite paving stones put down, and they had to get them all lifted and dug up to put this channel in with a new power cable.
Wow.
And the neighbours were quite good about it, considering the fact that they weren't the ones getting the electric car, but they were the ones that had to get the driveway dug up. But the good thing is, I suppose, looking forwards, if you've done all this pain now, is that you know, if your neighbours, for example, they're going to benefit in the future because, like I said, by 2025, all the cars are going to have plugs on them. So, you know, they're going to need that upgraded supply, whether they have it now or in 5 years or 3 years or whatever, you know. So I think that, you know, we've been through the pain. At our last property, it had a 60 amp supply. We got upgraded to 80 amps because it was a fairly small property and we'd upgraded the electricity and stuff. That was enough for us to have a 32 amp charger. At this new house, we've got 100 amp supply. It's, you know, ideally all houses would have 100 amp supply, but there are grid constraints in certain areas, particularly with old infrastructure. UK Power Networks are looking at improving that, but at the moment, I say they're sort of doing it on a piecemeal basis. You know, whoever screams and says they need the job gets it done.
Western Power Distribution, so that's the company that covers the Midlands and South Wales. They flat out refuse to install 100 amp fuses. They will only do 80 unless you go to 3-phase, and then you have to pay for 3-phase. But also Barry in the chat brings up a point that the pod point chargers have a fuse saver mode, which with an overcurrent sensor on the main feed, if you go over 60 amps, it will cut the power, the supply to the pod point. Zappy's also got that ability as well. So when the installer installs it, he sets how high the fuse is, and it will slowly back off the charger until, if let's say you have the whole house on and you try and plug the car in, it won't allow the car to charge unless there's enough power to do it.
Yeah, before I got the wall box fitted, the installer asked me all these questions, asked me to take photographs of my electric meter, my everything, even where I was going to position it in the drive. They wanted photos of that. I've had easier interviews than getting a charging point put into my house.
Okay. Anything else to add on the chat that we've had from anybody as we're approaching, gone past the hour as usual?
Last real question I can see here is there a company that finance a charger installation?
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
Not that I know of.
Yeah, because of course they finance the car. They might not have enough money to finance the charger as well.
It's quite an outlay, isn't it? Really, you know, still another £500, £600, £700, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can you wrap that into the vehicle finance there, Miles?
Depending on how they've bought the car, we might be able to do. We do have some finance products we could potentially use for that. The difficulty is, until you've had the survey, we wouldn't necessarily know how much we're going to be loaning you, because, you know, we might say it's £500, but then if they end up needing to put in a new consumer unit and a ground spike and whatever else, then it could be, you know, £700 potentially. But yeah, no, we could look at rolling the finance in. Or what we've done sometimes is we could potentially, if there's a customer's taking finance with us, we can do like a cashback on the finance, so we can effectively add it in as an accessory cost and then give them the cash back to pay for the charger install or whatever. So there are things like that that can be done. Speak to your dealer if there's any issue like that. Speak to your dealer and see if there is something they can do.
It could be the difference between getting the car and not, really, couldn't it?
Oh yeah, and we're always we're always trying to work obviously for a sale. So if there's anything we can do, we will.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so shall we leave it there for this week? I think. Yeah, and anything else to add?
Yeah, I think that's about it, guys. Thank you.
Okay, so just to remind everybody, if you'd like to support us, please consider the MGEVs Forum Premium membership for just £3 a month. It gives you the premium member badge, the ability to upload a profile banner, the ability to select the MG Red theme, and the pleasure of knowing that you're supporting the website and this podcast. And thank you to our new premium member since last time, who is MJ224. So welcome to the premium membership. Okay, so that's it for the MGEVs podcast for this week. And my thanks to Mark, to Miles from the Chorley Group, and then we've got Mike Fisher. Thanks for looking at the chat. Thanks, Dave, for taking part. And finally, welcome and thanks again to Richard from New Zealand. I hope you have a good day. And thank you to the unseen Stuart Wright, who is working feverishly in the background, doing the buttons and the knobs and everything else you twirl to get this going. We'll be back next Monday, the 26th of April. The usual time is 7:30. So we look forward to seeing you again then. Thanks very much for joining us. Have a good week. Bye for now.